All right, today we're going to jump into something pretty fascinating, a really old model of the mind. We're going to break down how something as simple as, say, a smell or a sound can travel all the way through your internal system and actually become a core part of who you are. I mean, have you ever stopped to really think about that? I'm not talking about what you believe, but how are those beliefs actually built? What's the step-by-step process that creates these deep convictions from scratch?
Well, it turns out an ancient school of thought actually mapped this whole thing out centuries ago. And for them, it wasn't some big mystery. Nope. They saw it as a predictable, almost mechanical system, a closed loop. What's absolutely wild is how this ancient blueprint, with all its different parts, kind of echoes what modern cognitive science tells us today about how our minds process reality and build habits.
All right, so let's dive right in. First, we're going to look at the basic components of this, let's call it a mental factory.
So the best way to wrap your head around this model is to think of your mind as an internal assembly line. Seriously. Raw data from the world comes in one end, it gets processed at all these different stations, and then it's finally put together into the finished product. You. Your thoughts, your identity, the whole shebang.
Okay, so here's the crucial part. Every single belief you have, I don't care how complex or abstract it is, it all begins its journey from one single point, your senses. So it all kicks off with what this model calls the indriyas. That's just a fancy word for your senses. And you can think of them like the loading dock for that mental factory we talked about. They're just constantly bringing in raw, totally unprocessed data from the world. Let's take an example. Imagine you walk into a kitchen and you get a whiff of cookies baking. Okay, at this very first stage, that's just a neutral smell. It's not good, it's not bad, it's nothing. It's just raw data entering your system. Okay, so now let's check out the 4 key workstations on this assembly line. These are the spots that take that raw data and actually start to make some sense of it. First up, we have manas, which, we can basically just call the mind. This is your initial processing unit. It grabs that raw cookie smell and slaps a basic label on it, turning it into a thought you can recognize. Something like, I'm smelling something sweet. From there, that thought zips over to buddhi, or the intellect. This is like the categorization station. Your buddhi analyzes that thought by checking it against all your memories, and then it makes a judgment. It's the part that says, wait a minute, this isn't just any sweet smell. That's grandma's specific chocolate chip cookie recipe. And of course, the only reason the body can do that is because it has access to chitta, which is your memory. You can think of chitta as this massive, sprawling warehouse that stores every single thing, every experience, every impression, every idea you've ever had, just sitting there, ready to be pulled up. And finally, the whole process gets to ahamkara, the ego. This is the eye maker. This is the part that takes that perfectly categorized info. This is grandma's cookie, and makes it personal. It attaches an eye to it. It creates that sense of ownership that leads to a decision. Hey, I like that smell. I want one of those cookies. Now, here's what's so important to get. These 4 parts, manas, buddhi, chitta, and ahankara, they're not just working separately in their own little silos. No way. They're all part of this super tightly integrated network. They're constantly talking to each other, constantly influencing each other to build your entire perception of reality from the ground up. So that internal decision, that I want a cookie moment, well, that leads to an action out in the real world. And this, right here, is where your identity really starts to take shape, to harden. That decision from the ahamkara, the ego, leads you to do something. You walk over and you eat the cookie. Now that action and the experience of eating it, that gets fed right back into the system. It reinforces and solidifies a tiny little piece of your identity. In that one moment, you've just become someone who loves and eats cookies. So you see, in this model, your identity isn't some fixed, static thing that you're just born with. Not at all. It's actually this dynamic result of a constantly repeating cycle. Thoughts, decisions, and, this is the big one, your actions. It really boils down to this. You are what you do over and over again. And that brings us to maybe the most powerful and honestly the most potentially dangerous idea in this entire model. And that is the feedback loop. It's a pretty simple but incredibly powerful 4-step loop. Check it out. Step 1, your ego makes a decision. Step 2, you take an action out in the world. Step 3, you observe what happens. And step 4, that outcome becomes brand new data, brand new sensory input that flows right back to the very beginning of the assembly line, reinforcing the whole system all over again. And this image, wow, it just brilliantly illustrates the whole thing, right? It's a complete self-reinforcing algorithm running in your mind. Every single experience you have, every action and its result, it just updates your belief system, making that belief just a little bit stronger, a little more dug in each time.
But, and this is a big but, there's a catch. This automated loop, it can totally become a trap. It's how powerful cognitive biases get created. The system starts to filter reality for you. It begins to pay attention only to the stuff that confirms what you already believe, and it just completely ignores anything and everything that might challenge.
But here's the cool part. The model itself actually gives us the key to breaking free. It suggests that if you introduce some conscious, critical thinking, a little self-inquiry, which it calls jnana, you can actually interrupt that automatic process. You can step in and consciously question the data before it gets a chance to reinforce the bias.
And that leaves us with one last, kind of mind-bending question to chew on. If your entire personality, all your beliefs, your whole sense of you, if it's all just the product of this automatic algorithmic loop, then who or what is the observer? Who is the one that's watching this whole show unfold?